what is the programming that happened to me as a kid? And why do I keep it? What have I subscribed to that is not serving me at all? That just keeping me on this hamster wheel that I keep going over and over dealing with. And
Welcome to Living God's Light, a podcast to help you strengthen your spirituality and your connection with God. We are so happy to have you as a part of the Living God's Light family.
This new lifestyle I've been trying to build, went and spent with family and friends first part of the day, and then went and ran some errands, working on getting going to a local library and teaching people how to write their own stories.
why don't I live closer to you?
Just getting it organized. That's going to be in April.
Cool.
It's going to be a bigger event. We'll probably be able to have 12 local authors there, which would be great.
Oh my goodness, that's way cool.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh, my day yesterday, I went to group therapy, but the day before I attended 12-step for, it's like the 12-step of the betrayed partner. That was really cool. It was really cool.
Right on.
I've been on this 2.5-year journey, but I haven't gone to a 12-step group yet. So that was interesting. Yeah, it was good.
Very good.
Yeah.
I love organizations like that where, so many of us, we believe our struggle is just our struggle.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not. There's so many people going through our struggle as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I love 12-step. You now find a support structure, a social structure to climb out of whatever, issues you're finding yourself in.
Yeah, I even said to the group, it came around to my turn, and I was like, I never met you ladies, but I just feel like we're already friends. Because you know what I'm going through. Like, you just know. Like, we can get right into a friendship. Let's just go for it,
Well, it's like Lynn being a soldier, a veteran. He meets other soldiers, and they have an instant rapport with each other, even with the different branches you do, right, Lynn?
Yeah, there was
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in the Air Force, and one of the guys I was hanging out with yesterday was in the Marines, and somebody who was not in the military was talking about kind of the rivalries and the Marine guy, and we just looked at each other and we just kind of laughed because people on the outside are like, why are you guys always like talking bad about the other services? And I say, well, it's really just a professional courtesy. I mean, if you don't, they'll wonder if you don't like them. But as soon as somebody outside the military group starts picking on, like if somebody started talking bad about the Marines, I'd be like, are you kidding me? They're amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't say that to the Marines. And they know it's a different culture. But yeah, there is a bond there. There's an instant bond. And it's interesting to me how communities, all kinds of communities, like well, I was going to say introvert, but I'm really more of an ambivert. But if you find people with a connection, that's what we're trying to do with Living God's Light, is help people who are looking for strengthening that spiritual connection to connect with other people doing that same thing, so we can learn and explore and figure things out from each other, because everyone's got something to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. It's been cool watching the comments too on some of our videos, because some people are talking back and forth, people that are across, who knows where any of these people are. And it's really cool to watch how they're being affected, but then also connecting within our community that we're even building up in this digital space. It's wild. It's cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. Well, Lynn, you had the coolest idea for a topic today, and I'm stoked to talk about it.
So Alyssa, tell us how you got introduced to this and why you like it.
Okay. So we had talked about how I was a crazy New Year's resolutionist, right? And that night, middle of the night, I wake up and I felt like I got this spiritual impression that Spirit was saying, you want to know how to do a good goal, right? Like, you set these goals and that's cute. January. But if you want to set a goal and keep it and probably get more like momentum under your feet, start it in spring. And I sat with that for a bit. I was like, well, that makes sense. The sun's out longer. I just feel better in spring when I start seeing beautiful blossoms start to arrive. And so I started breaking that down. And so you started talking about, you go into what you've been sharing with me about the calendar and stuff. So
Yeah. So I've always been big into like visions and dreams and goals and getting things done. And we do that. I wrote a book about it on goal setting and success, which my wife says I need to do a second edition of because it's gotten kind of old now. Anyway, so but the last several years with all of the projects that I have going on, the winter months really start to drain me. And so this last year, I tried a totally new approach, went into just maintenance mode instead of build mode through the winter. It was great. First time I didn't get hit by really bad seasonal depression in several years. But I've also been one who likes to set, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do New Year's visions. What do I want to create for the new year? But the last few years, while I've been dealing with these things, I haven't really been in that habit. So I realized this year that I need to do that in the spring. And what's interesting historically, and this is what we were talking about, and Alyssa said, get brushed up on this. So I went and I looked it up. So calendars have shifted a lot over the years, trying to come up with different things. And a lot of them are lunar calendars historically. But since the lunar month is only 29 and a half days, what would happen is the months started shifting and didn't line up with the seasons anymore, like they were intended to do. So in about 45 BC, Julius Caesar came up with a Julian calendar. He commissioned somebody to do it, but they had a 365-day calendar, leap year every 4 years, but they were off by about 11 minutes, which isn't really big a deal year to year, but after that, it really starts adding up. So fast forward to 1582, when Pope Gregory the 13th, that's where we get the Gregorian calendar. It adjusted that a little bit. But back in the Roman days, the first month was March. And the first 4 months were named after the gods. But if you think, so like September, Sept, October, Octo is 8, November 9, December 10. So December was the last month. They only had 10 months and they just didn't have anything for winter. They just kind of coasted through that and then started the year again in January. March. Started in March. And then later on, those January, February got added. So all of that is to say, the reason we celebrate the beginning of the new year in January is because way back in ancient Rome, that's when the consuls took office in ancient Rome. And that was the start of their new year. But there are other places in the world that still use a different calendar, at least for their holidays, if not most of the world uses the Gregorian calendar now. But you've got Nowruz, which is a Persian spring celebration, Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish start of their new year, the Chinese New Year, which is more aligned to holidays than business. But anyway, so a little bit of a history lesson there. But with all of that, the short answer is the beginning of the year used to start in March.
Like, I get this little download and then you bring me this confirmation and it was like, whoa.
Yeah. So really, and that started a whole conversation on how there's social and organizational constructs that we are raised in that influence how we live our lives. And they're useful, they're valuable, there's a lot of reason to do them, but be aware of how those things might be constraining your freedom, your flexibility, your growth. And if you need to, adjust them. Don't think like you've got to do New Year's resolutions on January 1st because that's the construct.
Right.
It doesn't hurt anything to go, you know what, I'm going to do mine on March 1st, or I'm going to do it on the first day of spring, or I'm going to do it at summer. Find what works for you.
Yeah.
You'll hear me say time and time again, whatever works for you is right.
Yeah. Love it. What do you think
That's
about this,
awesome.
Vinney?
I love it. Many years ago when I was young, I had someone, I was just walking by them, didn't know who they were. They grabbed me by the shoulder, and this woman goes, "When were you born?" And I told her, and she goes, "No, you were born on the 7/7/77." And I'm like, "Well, part of that's right. I was born September 7/77." And she's like, "Yeah, September's the 7." And I'm like, "Oh." So it got me thinking, as a younger kid, that there was something there about that. And then I kind of let go of it because, kids, short attention span. And later in adulthood, in my own studies, I always associate better with the Chinese than I do my own culture, and kind of the Oriental or Asian cultures. I love their food better. I loved living there when I lived there for years, and so in all of that, I recognize that the Chinese calendar, which is accepted all over Asia, that their New Year is in March as well. So it's kind of fun, here living here in Vegas. Everybody local knows you got to go by Bellagio and check out the Chinese New Year display in the garden there. It's always just tremendously beautiful.
I need to go check that out. I'm only 2 hours away.
Yeah, that's a drive down, take a look, and drive back.
Yeah, totally.
And a really cool chocolate factory right next to it. So
yeah, I need to come. Bring my kids.
So what sort of things are you both looking at for this vision for the new year, whenever it starts? I mean, because we got time to think about it and all the rest, but what does that renewal or that anticipation of renewal mean to you?
Well, I love thinking that the New Year is March, or even April. Some people say the New Year is April, but I love that March, April is the new year because spring is starting. It's very much in that energy of new beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas January, especially if you live in a winter climate, that's kind of a rough time to start working out or going outside a lot, and much easier if it's towards the spring for sure. So it's easier to keep new habits and new beginnings if they're started in March for sure.
I have always, like I told you guys, I was the New Year's resolutionist. Like I'd have a list, and this year I really kind of one of my goals is to set down that expectation that I have to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
I got to set that down. And I have also in the past been a habitual business starter.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from if I do something, I need to make money to make it worth my time. Okay.
Yeah.
So me starting art, even me starting that and just letting it be a playful thing rather than something I turn into a revenue stream, because that's silly that I would do that. It might work for a lot of people, but I notice my patterns, right? And if I jump back into that pattern, I'm going to get into a place of burnout, because what am I actually looking for? Is it self-fulfillment, or am I looking for validation from the outside? So I've had to work out through all these constructs. And so I am focusing on working with this team right here, being part of a team, not trying to do it all myself, and actually enjoy something that will not bring me revenue.
Awesome.
And love it,
So I have an idea for you.
Yes,
Not even a suggestion. It's an idea. Do with it whatever you will.
I love these. Yes.
Something that I like to do is look at the different aspects of our existence here. So there's the physical, the mental, spiritual, and you can also add in like the emotional kind of well-being. And there's, depending on how you look at things, there's lots of different ways to break that down. But then look at one thing this year to do to either increase your capacity or whatever physically, whether it's working out or eating different or whatever, something you can do mentally like
Mhm.
read a certain number of books or a certain kind of book or a book. Spiritually, an idea that just comes to mind, a little bit of a plug. So we have the workbook out now.
Yes, we do.
The workbook could be a great way to, so in the Light After Death, there's the 10 principles that Vinney learned. And people were like, hey, these principles are great, but they're a little harder to implement than they may seem. So what can you get for us to help us with that? And the workbook was the result of that. And so the workbook would be a way to work on that spiritual connection. And you don't have to do that solo. I also feel like I should mention that we haven't explained this by email yet. We have, as we went through developing the workbook, we had people that went through that process with us and helped us refine it. And they ended up being certified as facilitators for the workbook. And so if you go through our website at livinggodslight.org, you can find links to join one of those facilitated groups and meet some new people and go through the workbook as a group. So that would be something you could do. But really, think of whatever categories and have just one thing in each of those as your top. And then if you want to fill in other things, great. But then you're moving yourself up the mountain in a variety of different areas.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to approach that with more curiosity, and I'm going to watch this podcast back. How about that?
and do it like Vinney says, do all this stuff with a playful curiosity, not with any sense of obligation. And if it feels good, give it a try. And here's the other key. If you say, this is what I'm going to do this year, and you get 3 or 4 months down the road and you're like, this isn't working for me, don't feel like you've got to stick with it. It started out as an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And if the experiment isn't working, change it, replace it with something else. It's all just part of this learning. Don't feel like, oh no, if I don't follow through on what I picked at the beginning, I failed. Not at all. So let go of that expectation.
Which is kind of funny because that brings, like, my brain is sinking back to the idea of maybe okay, I'm going to take exercise as an example. Okay. So doctors say, gurus say, everybody says I should be exercising. So societal norm or a societal construct would be that exercising is very good for us. And I know that yes, obviously it is very good for us. Okay. But I've been trying to figure out how to get myself into a healthy emotional space where I make it's about my overall general health rather than about what it means about my physical body, because physical appearance has been a thing I've had to really work through. So I guess my question is, and maybe where my curious brain is going, is how can I break down some societal constructs that have been built up that I can allow myself to play in a space that doesn't allow myself to beat myself up for not fitting into a societal construct. Does that make sense?
Yes, in a maddening way, right?
Yeah, I feel like I just did a big circle that went nowhere.
So I'll restate and then I'll hand it over
yes,
to
please do.
Vinney. So what you're asking is, society tells me I need to do certain things or be certain things or look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm inclined to pick things to do, goals, whatever, that align with society's expectations. How do I break that and actually align with things that are good for me?
Yes, thank you, Lynn, for eloquently saying that I could not say.
Vinney, over to you.
Yeah, what I love too is when you take that playful spirit towards any goal, you don't have to put a firm line to achieve the goal. You can put many lines to achieve the goal. And I think for all of us, the more open we can be, or the more open to additional options, like for instance, how she was saying with exercise, she could, as one of those exercises, play, jump around, play with your kids for 30 minutes. That's an exercise. That could be one of your options on the table. not just, getting on a treadmill or going and hitting the gym, but keeping it more open to I'm a firm believer in a spirit of a law versus a letter of a law. And when you follow a law because of the spirit of the law, it can become part of your whole life forever. But when you're following the letter of the law, you'll always be disappointing yourself.
I guess I'm not understanding that all the way. I don't think
so. So the way to find out the spirit of a law or the spirit of a goal is ask yourself, what does exercising deliver to you? So let's ask, what does exercising deliver to you that makes you different than before you exercise?
You're asking me, right, to answer this question?
Yep. Authentically and honestly, what is your benefit? What benefit do you experience when you do that?
My brain is snapping back to my old patterns. So I know that.
That's okay. Allow it. Don't fight it.
Recognize it.
Say what comes.
So I know that my brain is snapping back to old patterns, which is actually why I've made a conscious effort to not exercise lately. Not exercise, like go to the gym and lift weights and do the stair climber for 30 minutes. I've allowed it to be more play with my kids, be home and just make sure I'm moving around. Is because when I would do that, I would come home and go, okay, I'm going to look better now. And that's messed up. Instead of going, how do I actually feel? Do I feel like I've opened up some energy? Do I feel like I love myself? And I feel like I'm making good choices to take care of my body because I'm so grateful for my body. That's how I want to do it. But I know there'll be I know that I will, now I'm going to look better in a swimsuit.
Which
it's frustrating.
Okay, so I'm going to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, please.
So and this can get really tangled really fast. I'll try to keep it simple. So on the one hand, I see another societal influence here that feeling good about looking good is vain and therefore a bad thing. So on the one hand, society says you need to look good, and then we feel, well, society's wrong, and so if I feel good about looking good, I'm vain, and that's a bad thing. It's a lose-lose. But if you like the feeling of looking good, you can do that intrinsically without being vain about it. When you create your art, you take some level of satisfaction when you do something that you believe looks good.
Yeah, absolutely.
You created that. Yeah. And our bodies, they're a tool that we take care of, and it's okay to want your body to look good. It doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else. And this is where you run into problems. If you have the culture of comparison, where you're like, I look good, I look better than somebody else, or I look as good as this other person, that's when you run into problems.
Yeah.
But when you feel good about taking care of your body and that you have got for your body is in a good shape and you work to do that, it's almost like a form of art where you're using your own body as the clay.
Oh my gosh.
And really what matters in all of that is what is the attitude you're holding? Is it a comparison or is it a self-fulfillment? You're happy with you. And your body can be a broken mess and you can still be happy about it. I've got a niece who I've mentioned her before. She got hit by a drunk driver and lost both her legs. A teenager. She was in high school when this happened. But she has turned that around. So she's in a wheelchair. But lately she's been, cutest video ever. She showed how she adapted some snow pants. She's learning how to ski, doing adaptive skiing. And she cut the ends off the snow pants and sewed them up so they'll fit with her without the extra cloth flopping around. And she's really happy about that, and she's doing things, and but she's not a look at me sort of. I mean, she's beautiful inside and out. But
Lynn, that's your niece? I know who that is. I know exactly who you're talking about.
yeah, Sarah.
Yes, I know who
Sarah
you're talking
Strong?
about. Yeah.
No, well, I say so. She's like my cousin's daughter, but we're
Okay,
we're
still,
like
you're
siblings. Yeah,
connected. Yeah.
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Sarah, if you look for Sarah Strong, yeah, she's on Facebook and all that. We might
Which
even
is crazy. Okay, let me just
yeah.
tangent point this out. Her light was so strong, so bright. What happened to her was a tragedy.
Mhm.
But how she took that tragedy, and I mean, it was love and light that just
Oh
poured
yeah.
and burst out. That I know who she is, right?
Oh,
Like I know who you're talking about, and I've never known that you have this connection to her. Super cool. Okay, back to what we were talking about.
all right. So the point being, don't feel bad about liking how you look. If you do, dig into that and find out what social constructs are making you feel that.
Oh man, it's never ends, does it?
Look, so social construct, they can be very valuable, but they can also be very debilitating. So just be aware. And then you go back to, like Vinney says, that curious exploration. As long as you've got that playful energy, and because kids don't care, they
Yeah.
don't have social stigmas. They do what is fun.
Yeah.
And they're kind and they're loving and they're forgiving. And you just be like a little child.
Yeah.
I like when you stand in front of the mirror and you look at that body that you're in, and it's pretty hard to change that body. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of, consistency to change that body. But one thing that I've found personally that works amazing for me is to start loving the body how it is and move it because you love it, not move it for a future version of it that you want to love, but love it first. And the way I was taught that was by Spirit, because I was sitting there looking at my body and thinking, man, this is I joke around, it's my second body, because the first one I put in a body bag. And it has had some issues, remnant from the experience, just some, and not a ton. But I look at it as this tremendous thing, but yet I've had to fight it quite a bit on certain things. And when I was looking in the mirror one day, I had Spirit come in really strong and say, it asked me, would you want your children to look at their bodies the way you're looking at your body? And I said, no, I would want them to love their bodies. And that's when it kind of hit me. That's the way our Creator wants us to look at our bodies, is with love, with adventure, with excitement, and accepting what is, and making it the best.
And in loving your body, you don't need to necessarily love every little thing about your body, especially as you get older, because things start breaking down and it's just not as much fun. But you can still be grateful for what you've got and the things that you can do with it. And sometimes even the lessons you can learn from issues your body has. But I mean, it's not like you can really trade it in to get another one.
Yeah.
So you might as well love the one you've got and just do the best you can with it. So do what you feel is going to elevate you, and you can even playfully experiment with how you view your body. It's like everything in life, you can change, people can change. And once you experiment with some different things and settle into what really elevates you the best, run with it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like everybody just witnessed a coaching session of Alyssa.
A coaching of all of us. We could all use help with that. I mean, what I love is, from all of this, we can learn a very, very simple, basic understanding that there's nothing outside of us that can make happiness happen inside of us without us making happiness happen inside of us. So choose happiness inside first. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also approaching like everything I've subscribed to, right? Everything. The book that made one of a big monumental shift for me was The Four Agreements. And it talks about like your programming, like you program a computer, like from a young age, we all get programmed, right? So, what is the programming that happened to me as a kid? And why do I keep it? It's fine to keep it because they are serving me in a certain way and I can approach it and look at it like that. But also, what have I subscribed to that is not serving me at all? That just keeping me on this hamster wheel that I keep going over and over and dealing with. And, the exercise has been a big one for me, but there's so many more. I mean, beauty standards for me is one I deal with as a woman. One that's big right now is how we approach like education with our kids. I mean, the voices all around that are all muddly right now. So I've had to really analyze and look at, what, this is what will work for my mental health and for our family as it is right now. And I have to shut out those voices that actually have really good reason as to why that works best for a lot of kids, So it's actively looking at all the aspects of our life and questioning, do I actually want to keep doing this? Is this a subscription I want to keep, or do I need to end that one because it's costed me way too much?
Well, there's a lot of voices, and sometimes even in the same spheres, those voices will contradict each other. And so what I always advise, in survival, walking in the wilderness, that sort of thing, one of the things you learn in orienteering is triangulation, where if you're trying to find the path, you know where you want to get to, and if you can figure out where you are on the map, then you know which direction to go to get where you want to go. So if you can find a couple of landmarks, a couple of mountain peaks, big, steady things that you can keep an eye on, and then you can use your position relative to those to figure out where you are on the map and what direction you need to go. So that's triangulation. So what I recommend is find in life, kind of do your own triangulation, find some of those big reference points. If you've got trusted sources that you don't use them alone, but another one of those triangulation points has got to be your connection with spirit, because your spirit team, they know things and they're happy to help you and support you, and be ready to discard any of those others. Always be open to picking new landmarks is what I'm saying. But use that triangulation, use that advice, trusted friends, people that are already where you want to be is another good landmark. Things like that. So just look for ways to cut through all the noise and the clutter, chart a course, and then be willing to change course if your current course isn't getting you any closer to where you want to be. Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect.
I love the book Atomic Habits. I love that book for the reason that you can make small changes. They don't, change your schedule so much. They don't revolutionize your way of being, but over time they do. So little changes over time compounded make big trajectory changes. I love that so much that a simple little 1 degree change at the beginning of a journey can put you in a completely different place than if you didn't make that 1 degree change.
Yep.
So, make little changes you can stick with. When people come up and say, I'm going to stop doing this, and start doing this, and this, I'm like, I'll see you in a week when you're really sad that you failed yourself from everything. And I don't tell them that, but I know for a fact my next session with them will be them being very disappointed. And so I just lead to it. Well, if things are really good, let's get together. If things are really bad, let's get together. And when things are really bad, I help them understand that the littlest change you can make in the right direction is the best way to go in the beginning. And as you get more accustomed to the little changes, start making bigger changes. And as you get comfortable with that, even bigger. You know, the more gradual you can ease your body into changes, whether it's the mind of the body or the physiology of the body, either one, the more success or consistent success you'll achieve. Yeah.
And tied to that, when we look at, I mean, the calendars are operated in years, getting back to what we talked about at the beginning, don't feel like you've got to target something for the end of the year. You could take it in quarters. You could take it in months. You can just say, this week, I'm going to do this thing, and then next week, I'm going to pick something else to work on. And whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you. I love that. I love that. Let's end it. Somebody close this out somehow.
I'll close this out. I know that for me personally, if I take one thing that I really enjoy doing and I attach it to a new behavior, a new habit, and say I can't do that thing unless I do the new habit, new behavior, and give that to me as kind of a reward, I personally find a lot more success with it. But it's really about us continually trying. And a mind in motion is a mind alive. A body in motion is a body feeling alive. And it's more about just consistently trying. Don't give up on your life. Keep trying. Pretend that you're looking at your child's life and looking at how they're living it, and start giving yourself some advice on what you would change. And you may be happy with some of the loving perspective that you can get by looking at yourself that way.
Thank you for joining us on the Living God's Light podcast. You can help keep the show going through getting merch at livinggodslight.com, or contributing what you think the show is worth on our website, or by going through Patreon. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. You are making a difference, and we love you.